really, really cherished and beloved mitzvah. That's how the Rambam describes lighting the menorah on Chanukah. Mitzvahs ner Chanukah, mitzvah chavivehi, ma'oid ma'oid. Now that's very unusual praise, unusual way for the Rambam to speak. He doesn't say that the mitzvahs of Leil HaSeder on Pesach are beloved, nor the mitzvah of reading the Megillah on Purim. Why did he reserve this praise specifically for the mitzvah of lighting the menorah? So I'll tell you a story. It happens to be true. There was a particular man who lived in Israel who would travel the world raising funds for an educational institution. He found himself in Italy in the most beautiful house, chandeliers, regal carpets, the finest marble. But something peculiar caught his eye. He saw on a side table a menorah, but next to this ornate menorah were pieces of broken glass. When the host saw this man, clearly wondering what the broken glass was doing there, he put him out of the suspense and told him, "Let me relate to you the following story. I grew up as a young boy in Holland. Till my bar mitzvah, I was from a very nice family where we did all the Jewish mitzvahs, all the Jewish customs with dedication and strength. My grandfather lived in Italy. At a certain stage, when I was still a teenager, he became quite ill. And as the oldest grandson, I was called upon to go to Italy and help him to run his shop, which I did. I went to Italy and I started to help him, and the business was doing very well. Not long after, sadly, my grandfather passed away. That left me running the shop all by myself. Business really took off, but as I found myself more and more busy with the business, I had less and less time for Yiddishkeit, for Judaism. It started that I stopped going to shul in the evenings, and then that became the afternoons and the mornings, and slowly, I slid away from any Jewish practice. I found myself married with kids, but none of us had any real connection to Judaism. That's not how I'd brought them up. That's not how I'd educated them. One day, I was walking the streets of Amsterdam, and I heard crying, hysterical crying. I saw a group of Jewish boys, and I went over to them to ask, see what's going on. There was a particular boy, the one who was screaming, who was hysterical. It was very hard to calm him down, but eventually I heard from him what had happened. Seemingly he came from a very poor family, and his father had managed to gather just about enough money to buy some olive oil for the menorah on Chanukah. He gave the money to his son and asked him to go to the shop to buy the olive oil, but he warned his son, please come straight back. Don't stop on the way and play with your friends. I'm very, very worried that the bottle might break. The boy went to the shop and he purchased the oil, but on the way back, lo and behold, he bumped into his friends, he started playing with them, took his mind off of the glass bottle of olive oil, and it fell on the ground and smashed. This was a hysterical boy. He said to me, he screamed, what will I tell my father? What will I tell my father? He trusted me with this precious thing. What will I tell my father? So I gave the boy money, I took him to the shop, we bought a much nicer bottle, much bigger bottle of olive oil than he'd originally had. But as I walked back home, suddenly the words of this young boy started ringing in my ears. What will I tell my father? What will I tell my father? He trusted me with something so precious. And I started to think to myself, I've drifted so far from Judaism. The day will come. What will I tell my father? Avinu Shabashamayim, our Father in heaven. He trusted me with something so precious, my neshama. When the day comes, what will I tell him about what I did with that neshama? And I realized at that point that I had to change my life. And I went back and I picked up those broken pieces of the glass bottle and took them home with me. That evening, I lit the menorah. My wife and kids weren't quite sure what was going on. They'd never seen me do that beforehand. But as each night went on, and I lit another candle, suddenly there was a reigniting of the spiritual light in my life and the life of my family. And that's why those pieces of broken glass that you see over there on the table are much, much more precious to me than any other piece of furniture or ornament in this entire house. And perhaps this is why the Rambam says that the mitzvah of lighting the menorah, Ner Chanukah, is chaviva ad ma'od. It's truly beloved and cherished. On Purim and on Pesach, the Jewish people had unbelievable miracles. Those miracles were there for our physical salvation, for our physical survival. But Chanukah was a different story entirely. The purpose of that miracle was entirely different. It was to give the Jewish people as a whole a spiritual reigniting, to re-inaugurate the Beis HaMikdash and what that represented. That's a whole new dimension of a spiritual awakening. And that perhaps is why the Ner Chanukah, according to the Rambam, is so beloved and cherished. Wishing you all a very, very happy and meaningful Chanukah.